The Middle East's most peaceful country is a place where men are afraid to get married. In Oman, the bride price alone can cost over $30,000 before the wedding day even begins. This is a country floating on oil and ancient frankincense, yet more than 80% of its food has to be imported. A country holding the third strongest currency on earth, where petrol is cheaper than bottled water, where criticizing the Sultan in public can send you to prison. It has some of the safest streets in the world and virtually no privacy. The Gulf's biggest peacemaker with the region's tightest silence. This is the reality behind Arabia's quietest paradox. If you're enjoying this deep dive into Oman, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more fascinating stories from around the world. Your support helps us bring you more content like this. Start with the white cities because everything Oman believes about itself is written into that one law. Number 1, the land of white cities. There is a country in the Arabian Gulf that refused to build upward. While its neighbors raced toward the clouds in glass and steel, this one passed a quiet law. No tower above 8 to 10 stories in the capital, every facade painted white or the color of sand, every roof arched, every window curved the way Arabian windows have been curved for 1,000 years. The capital is called Muscat. It looks like a page torn out of 1001 Nights and left on purpose in the 21st century. Now think about what that means. Right next door, Dubai builds the tallest tower on earth. Riyadh is drawing a 100-mile straight line through the desert, and Oman, sharing the same peninsula, the same oil, the same century, decided that skyline was not a race worth winning. They have a nickname for it, the Switzerland of the Middle East. Not for the mountains, though those come later. For the safety, travelers leave a phone on a cafe table and come back to find it exactly where they left it. If you're watching from somewhere loud and vertical, tell us where in the comments, because everything you thought you knew about the Gulf is about to bend around this one small country. And the first bend is a fact almost nobody outside the region knows. Long before Oman was quiet, it was loud, and it wasn't small. Number 2, the empire that moved its capital to Africa. For roughly 200 years, this country was not a client, not a colony, not a footnote. It was an empire. From the 17th to the 19th century, Omani ships ruled the Indian Ocean. In 1650, they did something the rest of the Arab world had not managed. They evicted the Portuguese, one of the great colonial powers of the age, from their own coast. And then they kept going. By 1840, the empire had grown so far south that the Sultan quietly did something no other Arab state has ever done. He moved his capital out of Arabia entirely across the sea to the island of Zanzibar off the coast of East Africa, closer to the spice and ivory trade that made the empire rich. Read that sentence again. The capital of an Arab empire planted on the coast of Africa. Their engine was a ship called the Dhow, built from wood by masters who refused to use iron nails. Every plank was stitched together with coconut fiber rope so the hull could flex with the ocean instead of cracking against it. Those stitched ships carried Omani traders to Africa, India, China, and they carried something back that you can still taste in Omani food today. The deep, dark spice mix of a country that once ran an empire from another continent. That empire is gone. The instinct that built it, quiet, patient, ocean-facing, is not, and it lives most visibly in the last place a Western imagination expects to find it, in the face of an Omani woman. Number 3, Omani women. Independent and beautifully layered. The image the West carries of a Gulf woman almost never survives contact with Oman. Here, women serve as government ministers, ambassadors, fighter pilots, petroleum engineers, police officers. They drive their own cars, run their own businesses, and have done so long before it was fashionable elsewhere in the region. Their faces carry the whole map of the old empire. the deep-set eyes of Arabia, the sun-strong skin of East Africa, the fine features of South Asia, sometimes all in one family. And above almost every eye drawn since childhood is a black line of kohl that turns the gaze into something a camera can't quite hold. Their everyday dress is called the jalabia, and Omani women wear it in colors the rest of the Gulf tends to avoid. Deep reds, saffron, forest green, embroidered by hand. In some regions, older women still wear the burqa, a small metal mask across the upper face that looks to a foreign eye like something carved by a jeweler. One rule for a respectful visitor: no unsolicited handshakes, no photographs without permission. Presence, not possession. If this part changed the picture you carried, drop a 3 in the comments.
Number 4. A Nation's Blade. If you're enjoying these hidden stories from Oman, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more fascinating discoveries. The Kiyar and the clay forts. Every country has an object that belongs to the whole country. In Oman, that object is a knife. The Kiyar is a short, sharply curved dagger worn at the waist. It is stamped onto the national flag. It is required at weddings, national holidays, and formal audiences with the Sultan. A man in ceremonial dress without one is a sentence with the last word missing. The blade is not the value. The hilt is silver carved by hand, sometimes wrapped in fine wire, sometimes set in rhino horn from the old empire days. A serious kajar can cost a few thousand US dollars, a great one tens of thousands. In Oman, a man's kajar is his balance sheet worn where everyone can read it, and behind the man stands a fort, Bala, Niswa, Rustak, great clay and stone strongholds that once defended the interior from every empire that tried to walk in. Their walls are the color of the desert, and inside them, the country practiced something rare in the region, the habit of governing itself. A knife in the wall it belongs behind. That is the older Oman still standing in the newer one. But there is one moment in every Omani life when the knife, the fort, and the empire all come due at once. It arrives with a bill, and it is the reason the country's young men have started to hesitate. Number 5. Ma, the bride price. Here is the fact that stops every conversation. Before an Omani man can marry, he must hand over in cash a sum of money to his bride. It is called the maha. 10,000 is normal, 20,000 is common, 30,000 and more is not unusual, and that is before the wedding. A traditional 3-day Omani wedding feeding hundreds of guests can push the total past 100,000 US dollars in a country where the average worker earns a fraction of that in a year. And now the twist. The M does not belong to the husband, it does not belong to the family, it belongs to the bride, entirely, untouchably. The husband cannot spend a single reel of it without her permission. If the marriage ends, she keeps it. It is not a purchase. It is a lifelong financial insurance policy for the woman paid up front in one lump sum by the man who wants to marry her. The consequence is exactly what you would expect. Young Omani men delay marriage. Some avoid it altogether. The government has stepped in with a national marriage support fund, quietly helping citizens meet the cost. Save this one to tell someone because everything you assumed about power in an Arab marriage just rearranged itself. And once the wedding does happen, it comes to a table you have never seen before. A table with no plates, no forks, and a hole in the ground that hasn't been opened in 2 days. Number 6. Shua and the right-hand rule. The national dish is called shua, lamb, sometimes goat, sometimes camel, rubbed for hours in a royal spice blend called baha, oman, cardamom, cumin, coriander, chili, dried lime. The meat is wrapped in banana leaves sewn into a palm sack and buried in an underground clay oven for 1 to 2 full days. On the 3rd day of the Eid holiday, families gather at dawn and excavate their meal. Yes, excavate. Cooking is archaeology. The eating comes with rules. Only the right hand. 4 fingers press rice and meat into a small ball. Thumb flicks it into the mouth. The left hand stays out of the food entirely. It has other unclean jobs, and whatever you do not point the sole of your foot at another guest. In this culture, the bottom of the foot is the lowest thing on a person, and offering it to a face is a small, silent insult. Would you eat something that was buried for 2 days to taste right? Tell us in the comments because half the country would sit next to you and ask why you were surprised. Now push back from the table and drive west where the ground itself has a story it has been trying to tell you. Number 7. Jebel Shams and the ocean floor in the sky. The land begins to rise. Jebel Shams, the mountain of the sun, climbs to more than 3,000 meters, and at its edge, a gorge falls more than a kilometer straight down. Locals call it the Grand Canyon of the Middle East. Geologists call it something stranger. The rock you are walking on used to be the floor of an ancient ocean. What Jebel Shams is showing you folded and pushed into the sky is one of the largest exposed ophiolite formations on Earth, a slab of oceanic crust that plate tectonics lifted, tilted, and offered up for anyone with eyes to see. Stand on it and the size of the story hits you. You are standing on a seabed 2 miles above sea level in a desert, an open-air museum written in geology.
Scientists travel here from around the world just to touch the past. Leave a like if the ground you're standing on right now suddenly feels newer than it did a minute ago. And if you want to explore more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel for future discoveries. And if the ground here has an unexpected story, so does the faith on top of it. Because Oman does not pray the way its neighbors pray. It never has. Number 8. Ibadi Islam, the quiet third way. Every explanation of Oman eventually leads back to a word you might never have heard. Ibadi Islam is not Sunni. It is not Shia. It follows a third branch of Islam called Ibadism that took root here in the 8th century and survives almost nowhere else on earth. Its core values are moderation, tolerance, quiet piety, and a deep suspicion of extremism in any form. That single fact rearranges the country. It is why the mosques do not shout, why the streets stay calm, why crime is close to nothing, and public conflict rarest still. The Omani personality measured warm, hard to provoke, is not an accident of temperament. It is a religion that spent 1,300 years shaping a temperament. Ibadi thinking also explains something you will only fully see at the end. This is the same quiet faith that in the modern world has turned Oman into one of the most trusted diplomatic mediators on the planet. But moderation taken far enough has a shadow, and the country's next answer to peace is the country's next answer to control. Number 9, the wall of silence, censorship, and living two lives. The safety has a price, and it is paid in what you cannot say. There is an unwritten rule in Oman. You do not publicly criticize the Sultan. You do not criticize the royal family. You do not criticize Islam. The security services are quiet, but they are not asleep. And Omanis learn young where the line is. Foreign visitors notice it in a smaller way. The voice call features of WhatsApp, FaceTime, and most other apps are blocked, funneling communication through channels the state can, if it wishes, watch. It is inconvenient. It is also intentional. The heavier cost is paid by a smaller community. Same-sex relationships are criminalized in Oman, punishable by prison sentences of 6 months to 3 years. The result is not the absence of LGBT Omanis, it is their invisibility. Men and women who spend a lifetime performing a version of themselves. Some enter arranged heterosexual marriages while quietly living another life inside them. The country is beautiful, the country is safe, and for some of its own citizens, the country is a room with the door locked from the outside. Sit with that for a moment, because to understand Oman honestly, you have to hold the light and the shadow at the same time. Now step out of that heavy room and, into an ordinary Omani afternoon, because before the country returns to its darker story, it will show you a rhythm no visitor forgets. Number 10, the country that sleeps at 1 p.m. Life here has a rhythm you would not expect. Between 1 and 4, sometimes 5, In the afternoon, the entire country closes, shops shut, offices empty. The streets of Muscat go so quiet, you can hear the wind. In summer, when the thermometer climbs to 45, 48, even 50 degrees Celsius, staying awake at midday is not laziness, it is survival. And here is a paradox that catches every new resident off guard. Petrol in Oman is cheaper than bottled water and cheaper than most vegetables. More than 80% of what Oman eats has to be imported, so a lettuce costs more than a liter of fuel. You fill your car for pocket change and pay a small fortune for a salad. By 5 in the afternoon, the country wakes up. Souks, the traditional markets, come alive as the sun drops, families walk, coffee flows, and the real Omani day, the second day inside, every day begins. But keep walking past the souk, past the neon, past the last families heading home. Beyond the city lights, another Oman lives, the one the tourism ministry does not put on postcards. Number 11, Omanization and the Kafala shadow. The Sultanate has a promise to its young people, jobs, and it enforces that promise with a policy called Omanization, which bars foreigners from working in hundreds of specific professions so that Omani citizens can hold those posts. On paper it sounds patriotic, but in practice it's complicated. Some positions actually sit empty. Some are filled by young Omanis on paid contracts with, honestly, little to do. And, well, nervous foreign investors have quietly moved capital across the border to the UAE. But there's a darker system underneath. South Asian migrant workers from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and the Philippines arrive here under a labor system called kafala, which ties each worker legally to a single sponsor, the kafil. In practice, that has meant confiscated passports, withheld wages, and workers who cannot legally change jobs or leave the country without their employer's permission. You see the gap on any drive out of Muscat, marble villas in the city, metal-roofed labor camps in the outskirts, all baking in the same sun.